first of all, it's been a while since I have done a space, and so I'm definitely going to reintroduce myself and my background, and then I want to get into some ways that we as Black Americans can structure our lives for healing, because I believe that to be very important, and I believe that it can be tough for a lot of us to be able to do that, and we'll talk about why in a second. But it's I think the last space I did was February. Personally, I had some life to take care of, and I would rather take a step away to be able to handle what I need to handle than to be inconsistent. So me coming back into the spaces, it means that I'm going to be able to be consistent with assisting us with this project of self repair, the project of self care, self nourishment, and rebuilding ourselves. And I won't even use the word rebuilding. I'll say, just building. Period, because we're in a space where we are able to create something new. Many of us have endured childhood trauma, which means a lot of our patterns have been a part of who we are since 3, 4, 5 years old. So there's maybe a version of you that you've never seen before. So in essence, it wouldn't be rebuilding. It would be building something totally new, something totally different. Being the person that you taking all the strengths that you've acquired along the way and building something totally new. So that's really the journey that I want to take you on. This is something that I want to do, or that I will be doing every Tuesday. And we're going to call it Above Trauma Tuesdays. Basically, this will be for whoever wants to partake. This will be our day to decompress, to release and let go of a lot of things, and to get some insight and also some validation. Right, one thing that I know is difficult for a lot of us is that we may be surrounded in our lives by people who do not validate our feelings, do not care as much as they say they do, are not invested in our growth, maybe are only interested in using us for our resources, our support, our energy, our intellect, right? And so you may be in a situation now where you're going through certain things, or people are causing or re-traumatizing or triggering you or causing pain, and you don't have anybody necessarily to speak to who would give you an unbiased empathic response without having their own ulterior motives, or uh having any underhanded type of perspective on things. So this is in essence a safe place, but also somewhere where you can get some information, some assistance and support with the awareness, but also the strategies, techniques, things to focus on, right? So I go by the name I was about to get right into it, but I go by the name of Marcus Cade Jr. I am Black American, and I'm from Atlantic City, New Jersey originally. I'm in Maryland now, but my background is in mostly mental health. So I've worked in many different environments. I've worked as a school counselor. I've worked in private practice. I have worked in some residential settings. I have worked in home-based counseling as well. I've done. I've written 2 books. I have been focused mainly. I'm also a trauma recovery coach as well. So I do work with families. I work with youth or adults with the building process, the healing process, the specifics on what to do about trauma and its effects. And I will be having an event. Um, if you're interested in the upcoming webinar, I have a webinar coming up next month. The link is in my bio, so you can check that out anytime. It's a free event, and I plan to really go deep there. So it's something that you definitely want to check out. But my purpose is to help us to be a self-healing people, right? What we go through is, and I plan to get into this a lot more in the event as well. But what we go through as a people is drastically different than any other group, and our trauma is not only compounded, but there are entities that profit from us being constantly re-traumatized, right? And so my aim is to help us counter that with creating a lifestyle that is self-healing based, because a lot of times we're given cliches when it comes to healing, right? People say, well, go just go get therapy, or and they kind of leave it at that, go get therapy, right? So the problem with that is, there can finding the right therapist can be very difficult. Can be a very difficult process. There's the racial element as well, and then there's also, as some of you may have seen on TikTok and just social media, where certain so-called therapists, number one, they need help themselves, a lot of it, and number two, they may have their own personal biases towards the opposite gender. So even when you do find, or when you do find, a black therapist, um, they may co-sign everything you're saying, which is not helpful and not progressive, or they may have issues with you or deny you services based on you having a certain gender and whatever their past experience is. And so it can be a difficult place, or a difficult goal to achieve sometimes, as far as finding the right therapist. And then even when you do, it's only once a week. Uh, and if you're Black American, you don't you need a lot more in the realm of support than just once a week. In my opinion, I think we all need a lot more than that. And then so I have a lot of ideas on how to fix that. But I think you know it's important to know that we have to move past what may be traditional, and past even our normal concepts of what self-care is, because for some of us, our version of self-care may have consequences, right? And I have this thing where I always recommend, when doing coaching, I always recommend self-care without consequences, right? So meaning, sometimes the general view of, okay, I'm having a tough week, and so my self-care is going to be to go out. If you're a woman, maybe go out, with your girls, or if you're a guy, hanging out with the guys or something like that. But if you are if who you're hanging out with are people that don't don't nourish your greater version, or don't, or are not pushing or challenging for you to be your best, or not, or who aren't a part of your healing process, but who may be people who keep you either stagnant or introduce you into energies that take away from your growth or make life more difficult, right? Or who may have, secret envy of your life, or who may have certain jealousies about you, that or certain insecurities that they may take out on you, or they may want your downfall and kind of be, or put you in certain positions that, you know, may make life harder, or may make it harder for you to actually heal some of the things that you're going through, or who may either make fun of or minimize your victories in life or your disciplines in life, right? They may try to shame you for trying to become better. And so that hanging out with those type of people is actually not self-care, it's actually detrimental. You know what I'm saying? And we also have to realize that there's a difference between self-care and escapism. And I think life can become so hard that we may tend to do things simply to escape, but those activities, those types of people or those types of substances or whatever the escape may be, compounds the need for self-care, compounds the trauma, and then now we have we're in a worse state that we have to deal with. So that's one thing we're going to talk about too. Is just some self-care ideas that do not carry consequences and make life worse. Also, what I'm going to talk about now is how the lack of self-care connects to trauma, right? Because one thing I've noticed is that for a lot of us that I talk to, it's difficult to put self-care in and to make it consistent, right? Um, for some of us, it may be because you are doing so many things for so many other people that you don't have the time for yourself. You don't have the boundaries yet set up for you to be able to take that type of time. It may be a situation where your job is so busy, or you may have kids, or you may be in um, a situation where you don't, every time you think about it and you try to implement it, something new happens that you have to recover from and have to deal with. And or you may be even in a toxic relationship that is too occupying of your time and emotions for you to even get to the point where you can start doing for self. Because if I'm being honest, a lot of times if you're in a relationship that is that consuming, um then self-care is definitely needed, even more needed, especially if it's a toxic relationship. Then it'll likely not combine well with self-care, and that's an indication. If you're going to be in any long-term relationship, you want to still prioritize personal self-care time, because it can be very easy to be swept into a relationship where the other person that you're dating becomes the main factor of your life. Now, if they're pouring back into you, that's good as well. But, in a relationship and out of a relationship, if you're single, it's even more important for you to do as well, because you want to create a space of regenerating your own peace, right? A lot of times the mentality is, well, I'm gonna look for a relationship so that person can become peace for me. But it's the opposite. You have to create space for yourself to reach and touch a level of peace on a daily basis. And you have to create a life and structure your life around making peace a priority, and generating that yourself, because that empowers you for the time that you do find your person, right? You do connect to that particular person that you may like or whatever, and you want to move forward. At that point, you won't be looking to them for something you're lacking. You will be adding a reinforcement to what you already have, right? So if you can self-generate your happiness and peace, then number one, it takes you out of a desperation mode where you feel like, and that's not everybody, but sometimes, some of us may hit that point where you long for that companionship, right? But when you train yourself to generate a certain level of internal peace, you basically move into that next stage with something to co-create with that other person with. And also you can identify who the qualities in the other person, and to know, okay, this person is looking to me to drain me of my peace. They don't have access to their own. And that will look that those types of the people who are in that particular state, you'll be able to spot them a lot faster because they won't be congruent with you, if that makes sense. So the one thing that I and let me know if anybody wants to get on as well, and kind of discuss this. If you guys have any points you want to make, definitely shoot me a request. But I think now more than ever, it is critically important for us to be placing self-care on a daily basis. Now I'm going to give you some activities that may work, but before I do that, I want to say that it does depend on the day, and it depends on the person. So self-care is not like cookie cutter situation where everybody do this and you'll feel better every time. There's going to be some days that certain activities are better for you. There's going to be other days where something else may resonate. But the main part, and this is something that I always stress, is for it to be a consistent, right? Meaning on a daily basis, doing something, whether you got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whether you have 2 hours free to yourself. There should be a time frame that you set for yourself where you engage in self-care. You engage in a time frame where you're restoring yourself. You're repairing yourself. You're recentering yourself, right? And the second point I want to make is that you want to do this every day, but you definitely want to do this after you get stressed and triggered. So you want to be always monitoring your mood states, right? Because your emotions tell you when there's an issue, or when you should be doing something for yourself, when you have what I call emotional impacts throughout the day, right? So if your spouse says something, or an ex that was abusive contacts you, or you have a position where your supervisor is out of pocket, or somebody passes away, you get word that somebody you care about passes away, or somebody's in the hospital, right? These different things are emotional impacts. And way too often what we tend to do is try to push through them, right? We try to, a lot of times we try to keep working, or keep pushing through that emotion and not responding to it, and not responding to it in a way that would be self-care oriented, right? Like, a lot of times we're there for people when they get triggered. We're there for other people when they have emotional impacts that affect them. And when your friend is down and going through it, right? And, family, etc. Like, we're there when they are going through their tough times. But a lot of times when we're going through that, we don't do anything to take care of ourselves in that moment. And a lot of times we defer that. We're like, I'll get to that feeling when I can, or when I have time. But the issue is, a lot of us are, maybe in positions or working, or have a lifestyle that's so busy that we won't get the time. So all we're doing is suppressing the emotions deeper and deeper, until they come out in certain ways, right? So because you can't, energy is neither created nor destroyed. You can't push it down and think it's going to disappear. It's the same way where, you don't feel like taking the trash out, so you try to stuff it down. As far as you put your foot in the trash can trying to stuff everything down because it's full, but you don't feel like taking it out. Well, you're not going to be able, at a certain point, if you keep adding trash in, you're not going to be able to. I don't care how much you weigh, your foot is not going to be heavy enough to push it out of existence. Like, you know what I'm saying? You're going to get to that critical point where you have to take it out. And the thing about emotions is, when you try to stuff those negative emotions and suppress them, they come out in displaced anger, where you might just go off on somebody. You might start crying all of a sudden for no reason, at any particular point, for something very small. You may get into emotional numbness, where you find yourself just kind of going through the motions and not feeling anything. And that's a very scary place. If I'm being honest, a lot of, if you're at that point where you're pretty much detached and you can't really feel any emotions, that's your mind is basically shutting it off. Because if it allowed you to feel exactly what, or the exact intensity of all the things you done stuffed and pushed down into the basement or the attic or whatever, if you were able to feel all of those emotions at once, you would go into shock. It would be too much. So the mind will shield you from overstimulation and things like that. So one of the defense mechanisms is emotional numbness, like, where your mind will simply shut the faucet off, because it's you haven't addressed the 45 different emotional impacts that you have felt, because either you were afraid to, or you didn't provide yourself the space to return to your best emotional state. And on a scale, what I typically do is focus on a scale from 1 to 10. 10 being the best, feeling, happy, joy, etc., and 1 being the worst, extremely sad, hopeless, or extremely sad, hopelessness, etc., would be 1, right? So on that scale from 1 to 10, you always want to be climbing the emotional ladder. On a daily basis, you want to be climbing the emotional ladder. The reason is, if you if you start off the day at a 10, let's say we start off the day at a 10. And let me shout out everybody that just came into the room. Let me reset a little bit. Sherelle, I see you. Nikki the God, I see you in here. B Sweets, I see you as well. I appreciate you coming. And I see B down here. I appreciate you guys coming through. We're talking self-care, redefining self-care for Black Americans. And right now I'm discussing how to assess yourself and how to respond to triggers in a way where you can dissipate and channel the energy so that you are not harboring pain. Because if we think of it like a sewage system, there has to be movement to the bad emotions. We have There has to be an exit. If we think of the mind like a house, right? And emotional impact, emotional injuries, triggering all these different things are trash, right? So essentially, if you don't utilize self-care, if you don't have a way of releasing, like a releasing system or an exiting system, what's going to happen is you're basically taking bags of, big hefty bags of trash, putting them in the attic, right? New bag of trash, fill up with negative emotions, pain, triggers, put them all in a bag, tie the bag up, put it in the attic instead of outside in the trash can to be taken away. A lot of times our tendency is we stuff these things in the attic or in the basement or anywhere throughout that house. And remember, the symbolism is the mind is a house, right? So we're stuffing these things in all of these different crevices. At a certain point, what's going to happen is, even if you stuffed everything into the attic, there's going to be fluid coming down. You're going to have pests in there. It's going to start to smell, and the rest of the house and the structure of the house will be compromised at a certain point, because now you have just random garbage and things aren't being cleaned. The foundations and walls and structures are going to start to weaken because you have just bags and bags of trash creating this sort of this disgusting type of space, and without any outlet or any exit. And uh, to be honest, many of us unfortunately are carrying this stuff around, are moving around in this way, and it's not something that you have to do. It's not something that you have to do. And the thing is, a lot of times we're carrying it either because we don't have anybody to release it with in a safe way. We don't want to burden anybody else. We have too many things going on. We're everything to everybody, right? And so we contain the dichotomy is we contain our sewage and save others from having to deal with what we go through, but we're the first one that is called when other people in our lives are going through, right? Because they know that they can rely on you. But where do we put ours, right? If you're that person, where do you put yours? And so, back to the emotional ladder. We have to be committed on a daily basis to climbing the emotional ladder. Now I want to preface it by saying this. It's not about a perfection thing. It's not saying, well, if you wake up one day and you're at a 6 and you can't get to a 10, something's wrong. No. 10 is the best feeling space, 1 being the worst. Wherever you fall, it's a guidance system. So you realize, okay, by ranking it yourself, you can realize what needs to be done. So if you find yourself at a 5, or for a better example, if you wake up at a 10 and then you have some bad circumstances that take you down to a 6, you'll feel the drop. You'll feel the drop. And when you feel yourself drop to that point, your goal is just to get back to 10. And if that's the goal, instead of The goal is productivity. The goal is this deadline. The goal is handling this for my friend. The goal is I gotta do this for my aunt. Or I gotta handle this for this person. And you're the that's the interruption. Having the focus or the goals, and this is how and I'm gonna tell you this too, for those working in either corporate America or working at a job. The problem that I have with a lot of jobs is that they impose their deadlines as on you, as if this is what your purpose is now, regardless of how your day is going, regardless of what your mental health needs may be, regardless of what you may be going through. Right now, it's not their job to counsel you or anything like that, but a lot of these jobs don't provide space, mental health days, right? Time off, except they don't provide days, nor do they provide the right environments a lot of times for you to be able to release these things. But this is something that I want you to carry yourself as a personal goal, no matter what project you on, no matter what company you work for, no matter what badge is on your chest, no matter what is on the placard or the paperweight at the end of your desk, no matter what credentials you got at the end of your name, no matter what title is on the front of your door, your goal on a daily basis is on that emotional scale from 1 to 10 to be climbing that ladder. So for example, if you have something happen that knocks you down emotionally, you have you have the God-given right to do something in response to push yourself in the other direction, to move, to elevate your own mood, and to reconnect with peace, intuition, positivity, optimism, and all of these different things, right? So how do you do that, right? Number one, like I mentioned, practicing self-care. Self-care may be stepping out for 10 minutes and doing a guided meditation, from YouTube. Self-care may be calling a certain relative and just talking to them, right? And you may not even talk about the problem, but you know that they make you laugh, or you know that they have a great energy. Self-care may be going to the water if you live near a body of water, and just looking at the ocean for 15-20 minutes, right? You can't do it as much now, but like, earthing or grounding, right? Taking your shoes, socks off and just being on raw earth for a certain period of time. That's a de-stressor as well. And that, just reconnecting with the electromagnetic field. And it does a lot for your mindset, reducing anxiety, reduces inflammation, a lot of those different things, more so in the warmer climates. But it also may look like 10-15 minutes to just take a walk, right? Walking does wonders for endorphins, cognitive focus, elevating mood, etc., right? You may just read a book. You may want to hit something, for my people who like to hit the bag a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You may have to make a quick gym run and handle something, and then come back, or save that for when you get off or anything like that. But what I'm trying to impart to you is that this can't be optional for us. This can't be optional for us. It's already stacked against this. If you look at the traditional work week, um, we are you it's 5 days to two, and that's the traditional work week. So you can't, in essence, I look at it as input and output. We should be able to have equal amount of self-care as we do as the amount of output that we do, right? On whether it's for a job or whatever it is. But the issue is, if we're at work 5 days, there's only 7 days in a week. If we're at work for 5 of those days, it's already imbalanced. And trauma thrives on fear and imbalance. Trauma is activated and causes fear and imbalance. So imbalance is already embedded in
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
trauma response and trauma-based patterns, right? It creates imbalance all over the place, and put a thumbs up too if you experience imbalance in your life. If the word imbalance resonates in one way or another, show me some kind of emoji to let me know, because the average person is imbalanced in most ways, is not able to, whether it's sleep, right? Whether it's there's an imbalance in your, platonic or romantic relationships. There may be imbalance in your, career. It may be imbalance, just mentally. You imbalance as far as being overwhelmed, right? So you're not, your feet aren't touching the ground. There's always something happening or something going on, and you're trying to recover from the one thing, and then something else is happening, and then you're trying to sleep, but then the eating is off. You're trying to regulate the right diet, and you ain't exercised in 4 months, and then you're trying to go back to that, and then so there's this constant seeking of balance, but then living in imbalance, and maybe even mentally, right? Let's talk about mood spaces. If we're talking about imbalance, a lot of times it can be right in how we feel, the imbalance of feeling negative more than positive, or if we feel anxious more than calm, right? We're living in the future more than the present. We're living in the past more than the present, right? These different levels of imbalance. So part of the commitment to self is the commitment to creating balance and returning yourself to what I call a cruising altitude, right? So if we're talking this a mood scale from 1 to 10, that 8 to 10 range is you're floating right there. You're just maintaining, right? If you think of a pilot, or if you've ever, obviously you've probably flown before, that where the pilot can just go into autopilot and kind of let off of the handles for a second, right? When you hit that cruising altitude, it's more of a maintenance job. But in those lower altitudes, it may be different because you're working on climbing into that altitude to be able to be on cruise control and be on, and be in that autopilot, right? But your day or your week or your mood or your, being triggered and things like that, you might not be there. And if you're at a 4 or at a 5 with an honest mood rating of where you are, then there's some climbing to do. The reason it's so critical to focus on this and to damn near drop everything and find a way to help to get on the upswing is because if you start your day off at a 9, something happens to knock you down to a 4, all it takes is one more situation and you're on the floor because you're already at a 4 and you let yourself stay there. You see what I'm saying? To be at a 4, at a 3, it's a very vulnerable space because the next thing that may happen can put you so deep that it can take you days to get out. And you don't have to show me any emojis for this, but I would assume that some of you may have seen some dark spaces personally and been in some dark spaces where it may take you days to reach a certain level of homeostasis or to return to a certain level of functioning. And that's definitely not what I want for us, which is why the discipline comes in, where we begin to make it mandatory, that because that's the word a lot of jobs like to use, right? When they send you the emails or the letters or whatever, when they change a policy, they like to put mandatory in big letters, right, to scare you into doing something else that you don't even want to do or whatever. But this me using mandatory is for you to not break, for you to change your internal culture, right? To change your internal mechanism, because the human body, mind, spirit, all these different things are adaptive. That's why they call them patterns, because they you know, a lot of us have adopted some of these things that, oh, that's just who I am, or that's just my personality. A lot of your personality is formed around those, that 0 to 7 time frame. And unfortunately, a lot of us may have had traumatic events or childhood trauma around those time frames. So our personality, a lot of times, especially the imbalanced parts of it, were built and constructed from how we were raised in that home environment. So number one, it doesn't mean, oh, that's just who I am. That's who you choose to be every day. It doesn't mean that certain aspects of yourself can't change. It doesn't mean that you can't reach your greatest version. It doesn't mean that you can't rewire and reprogram yourself into a level of functioning, a level of peace, a level of uh, happiness that you would like to live, and the type of lifestyle that you would like to live, and the type of, and the way that you would like to think, and the habits you would like to stop. It's all possible, but only with consistency, right? Because the subconscious is able to be influenced only by consistency. The reason that you're where you are right now, wherever that may be, the current version of yourself is based on a level of consistency, thinking a certain way, responding a certain way to certain things, and continuing to be in a with a certain level of patterns. Right now, it's not to say that all our patterns are bad. It's to say you get to pick and choose what patterns you like, what patterns you don't. And a lot of us are very much driven, right? Very much success oriented, very, very high achievers, very, very high intelligence. And the only thing that may be missing may be, you know, in the romantic department, or it may be in, the area of providing, being too many people's source of peace, or source of support, or being for too many other people, that the very thing that we deserve to have ourselves, that may be your the area you want to change, and that's very much changeable. You may be in a space where your moods, you want to regulate your moods, because you may be empathic, you may be, feel sensitive, or you may have a lot of wounds that you don't know how to change, or you may be living in a high level state of fear, where everybody's untrustworthy, and you live in a very guarded state of mind, um, and or you're very isolated, right? You take yourself away from the social contact because you've been hurt so many times, but then you have this longing for human contact, but that you can't really change. They can't really stop it, but then you don't want to be around people because there's always an issue, or you always seemingly attract the type of people that will hurt you in some way. Or maybe you have anxiety, right? You might be somebody who's an overthinker, so there's this fear of the future, or the fear of what's going to happen, fear of what's about to happen, and you live primarily in that future space. And it's very difficult, especially for if you suffer from this, because there's millions of possibilities. So if you fear the possibilities of each event that may be happening, it's very hard to step out of that, because there's so many possibilities of what could happen at any particular moment. So maybe this is something that you live with as well. And so, these are all of the reasons that we specifically, especially, have to create a a mentality of being committed to our growth, and to, in a mandatory way, have a unyielding self-care daily structure, right? um because it's not something that's negotiable. It's not something that should get pushed off the schedule based on any work situation, based on any caregiving situation, or any situation whatsoever. The reason is that, what are we communicating by this action? If we say that, yeah, I'm going to do self-care, but self-care can get pushed off of the schedule in taking care of someone else, and maybe, who's sick or who has a health condition, right? For example. Well, if you working 9 to 5, and then you have to go take care of a relative who's in a health condition, you've essentially worked twice as much in that day. So your requirement for self-care has doubled, and that's the day that you that you refuse to do it in order to do something. No, no, because we're essentially creating a deficit. You have to look at it as, like, if you look at it just from a financial standpoint, you in an overdraft. Way too many of us are in an emotional and mental overdraft state, where we're below the balance. We have not even become current with this bill that's been adding up. You ever see on Instagram, sometimes people will post their restaurant bill, be like $2,000, and be a whole bunch of items on there. Like, we're charging ourselves, we're being charged for multiple items, trigger after trigger after trigger, and we're not responding to that deficit. Whereas on a daily basis, if you're able to implement these things, and taking the time out, and I say, especially after situations that are the most draining. If you get drained more than usual on a specific day, you need that. Now, here's the other thing. Well, what if it's all day, or what if I have this going on all day? You may have to intermingle your self-care into whatever it is that you're doing. If you're on a job or whatever, and you're back to back that day, um, and you have something else going on that nobody else. First of all, you definitely want to look to restructure things so that this doesn't repeat, right? And I know when it comes to health conditions in certain families, sometimes some of our people in the family may be leaning on you, right? You may be the person who has to do everything family wise, because everybody else scatters when there's an obligation or there's a responsibility. So I get that as well. But in these cases, the number one thing is to make sure, or to be always brainstorming and problem solving, so that you can delegate and do what you need to do, and restructure things so that you aren't the lean on, the go-to, the person who's always has to deal with everything, right? And then number two, making sure that you infuse the self-care into whatever the activity is, whether you got headphones on, while you're over at the nursing home or the hospital, or you stepping out for different moments, right? And you're tending to your energy. You should be always tending to your energy and always self-evaluating. Where am I right now? Am I feeling bothered? Am I feeling tense? And what is this, right? And if you can isolate the thought behind it, then work on changing that thought, work on reframing that thought, work on creating a more positive thought to use instead of that, and get your body in motion, right? Exercise always works. um and it doesn't even matter the environment. I'm the type of person where if I need to, you know I used, when I used to drive a lot, there would be times where I just pull over somewhere and do some push-ups. If I had to do like a lot of home visits, or I was working on some home-based family work, and it was one of those busy weeks, and I felt like, whatever emotions I was having, a lot of times you can release those through, health, fitness, and just being active in some kind of way. You don't have to have a gym setting to be active and to just shake up the energy, right? Because you'd be surprised how easily you forget about dumb, toxic comments that you got that triggered you after you're able to just get active for a certain period of time. Do a circuit or something like that, and then there's been times where I would just hit the bag after something, and then by the time you're done, you barely remember what was going on. You don't even remember the trigger, right? Because you've channeled it, and by channeling it, you're communicating to yourself that, and conditioning yourself to say, if anything negative enters my energy field, I will repel it in one way or the other. Either I'm going to neutralize it by virtue of meditations and calming myself and nature, and I'll let it dissipate in that way, or I'll channel it through some sort of exercise and action and activity and movement, and channel the energy by a healthy defense mechanism by the name of sublimation, which is basically when you channel negative emotions into something artistic, something creative, for any artist that may be here, or recording artists, or anything that you may do. A lot of times you can channel a lot of bad emotions through creation, and some of the best creations come from the worst emotions. The same way, we talk about Mary J. Blige and certain artists, where a lot of times they say they liked her better when she was going through stuff, like when what I mean, when she had the toxic boyfriends and everything was going on, because that the music sounded better. It sounded like Summer Walker, and just certain people, they have a lot, they channel a lot of that, a lot of energy through uh you know a creative means, and that's why a lot of that music kind of resonates. So you're communicating to yourself, and conditioning yourself to always be releasing input and output. If it comes in and it's not positive, it's not growing you, it's not helping you to rise, it has to go. You have to do something to get it out of you, because you don't want to go back into storage mode, like the analogy I gave you before. You don't want to keep that big heavy 50-gallon bag sitting on the dining room floor full of trash, and just kind of let it sit there over time, because you know what's going to happen if you leave it there. You know what's going to happen when you leave it there. And you don't, the other thing too is, you don't owe anybody an explanation as well. When you do self-care, a lot of times it may require do not disturb on your phone. It may require time that is blocked out. And if you're a parent or something like that, and you may have to say, hey, between this time and this time, y'all got to be quiet, or they have to, you have to create a, a an uninterruptible boundary for yourself in these particular moments, because that also is a reconditioning of yourself to be oriented around positive energy and having that force field and that energy field that is protected, so that you are always in protection mode, because the more you can restore your energy, the better you feel, and the more confident you feel because of the discipline of protecting your own energy. The more confident you feel, the easier it is to dismiss bad energy people, right? There has to be an elevation to that point. It's easy to allow for bad energy people to connect with you if you have not dispersed all the bad energy that you may have accumulated from all the other people previously, and all the other situations previously, and all of the toxic environments and everything that comes with that. So when you're able to resonate at that upper level, everything changes. You're able to manifest better. Everything is more clear. Everything you're able to be in an elevated state that you feel, and that feels better than anything you've ever felt. Therefore, you will want to come back there again and again and again, right? Once you experience it. So you're actually creating this space for you. Now here's how it helps with dating. When you're in a position where you have conditioned yourself to release and to be unapologetic about cultivating your own peace and your own restorative space. When you go to meet people romantically, you won't you won't need them. They're and you will, number one, you won't need for them. You will want them and be able to add, but it will be an adding situation, to where they add to what you already have. And this essentially is the best case scenario, and it'll also put you in a position where, there's a lot you won't accept. uh your standards will be more adhered to, and you will be able to choose better, because you have to be in a certain space to choose better. A lot of times we feel like, based on what we have attracted before, that's all that's out there, and it can feel like that, like where that you feel like there's an abundance of this type. They have to be everywhere, and they're not everywhere. They're everywhere you are until you're able to heal those parts and recondition yourself and your energy to a point where your energy commands different. And then A, you'll attract much better individuals. B, the people who are that type won't resonate with you, and they will look worse. They won't look captivating, right? Because when you're on the same level with them, there's a draw to them. There's an energetic draw to them, and because it feels right, you might cause yourself to reason that it's right. I feel connected to this person. I feel like I've known them all my life. So this must be the right thing. I must go this way. No, that's and it's very confusing. But the draw is because there's a certain area that needs healing on both sides. And you're perfect for each other, but possibly for ways that keep you unhealed, right? So if you have, for example, if you have someone who is an overtaker, somebody who's a taker, they'll attract an overgiver, right? Now that's the perfect opposite match, but there's imbalance in both. and there can't be healing in both because there's imbalance in both, right? So the taker will take consistently, they will take everything, and they will not provide anything for you. They will not reciprocate, but they will create the breadcrumbs that make it seem like reciprocation is coming, right? Kind of manipulate in a manipulating way, leave certain hope crumbs, and manipulate via emotions to kind of create a scenario where you think that that person is going to provide something, and they don't, and they shame you anytime you stop the giving, the flow of giving, or you question anything they're doing, or you change the dynamic. They become very vicious when you change the dynamic. And then for the giver, they it's difficult for them to stop because there's a small self-esteem kickback for the giving that they do. Even when they give to exhaustion, there's a small self-esteem kickback when it happens. Even if the person that you're dating may be trash, you still feel a little bit good, rehabilitating this person or supporting this person, or the whole rescuer mentality, getting this person from A to B. You feel pretty accomplished being able to do that. But the problem is they don't respect you, and they're not loyal to you. And for the giver, that's confusing because it's like, okay, there should be a certain level of loyalty. I almost killed myself trying to make sure that you was good. I ain't got no money left. I'm all effed up, right? And so there's this assumed loyalty where there's this expectation, like, well, I've done all of this. How, and I'm asking for the bare minimum, and you tripping? Right. And then then you get the threats, you get this, this very vicious, venomous response, almost to shame you back into accepting nothing. And I think that if we go to the macro, as a whole, as a people, how many times are we shamed into going back to accepting nothing, right? And when it comes to something like reparations, that's the bare minimum, right? You done destroyed my families, and you got free labor for 400 years, and just give us the money back. It ain't like we want to we want to burn the nation down or anything like that, and we want to torture. We don't want to do 400 years to y'all. It's just give us the money back, and that is made to seem as, oh, nah, there's no way we could possibly do that. Are you out of your mind? Right? So even in a macro sense, as a community, we're shamed into, we should just take the scraps that we're given and be happy with, being at the bottom of the totem pole. And I think that when you combine the two, the macro, what we deal with as a people, and then in the micro, in our individual lives, and maybe from our childhood environments, have we been conditioned to be on the giving end to our own detriment? That makes for some very deep psychological patterns that may be difficult to break solo, right? By yourself. That's very difficult to do by yourself. This is why I do what I do, because we deserve the help, we deserve the support without all of the extras involved in it. Like the 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 biases and the agendas and all of the extras. We don't need all of that. We just need to be able to speak on our issues, to be heard, and to know how to, on an individual level, outside of the spaces, outside of the live streams, outside of all these different communities and these different connectivities, everybody here, and shout out to everybody who's going to listen to the replay, everybody listening, you have your individual lives where on a day to day, you may be in some tough spots, right? So what we talked about today are just some of the key ways to at least on a scale from 1 to 10, when we drop a couple rungs in the ladder, to start to hold ourselves accountable to, all right, I need to go back the other way. And I need to do something that I know that I enjoy, or investigate some new ways to take my 5 to a 6, take my 6 to a 7, and to always be climbing. And that's going to help you in multiple areas. And again, at my upcoming event, I'm really going to break this down deeper as well. So don't forget to click the link in my bio. It's free webinar. Come through. I'm gonna be definitely getting into not only just the different categories that we need to focus on when it comes to healing, but how to make it easy, how to make it manageable, and how to um, heal from things that we didn't cause, how to heal from environments that we didn't ask to be in, and just to ramp up our awareness about who we are individually and why we act the way that we act, and to know that even if the world looks hopeless, you know, the fairness and justice looks hopeless at times, we're still moving towards that. We're still pushing the line when it comes to certain things that we need as a people. But on a daily basis, none of us should be in a position where we feel unsupported, and none of us should be in a position where we defer our happiness to some far off time. We deserve to be, and it's just maybe my opinion, but I feel like we deserve to be happy on a daily basis. We deserve to activate our own peace, and we deserve to know how to do so. And we shouldn't be in a position where we just deal with whatever comes at us and focus on our resilience, because the resilience is built in. The resilience is God-given. But what I've learned personally is that, you know, when resilience is all we have, there's certain limits to that. There's certain limits to that. And you know, when our resilience comes first, and we're focusing on our resilience first, that means that inevitably puts us in worse mental and emotional states, because resilience is only activated when there's opposition. And so a lot of times we're unknowingly attracting more and more opposition, and more uh, difficult emotional situations than we need to have, because we're the resilient energy is dominant. If it's resilience, resilience doesn't exist until somebody's doing something, right? So a lot of times we may end up in some, bad jobs, bad supervisor, bad, relationships, or whatever the case is, and feeling as though that we're stuck there, and we just have to find a way to deal with that again. And our lives start to look like a timeline of just endless impacts, right? This happened, then this happened, then this happened. And what tends to happen too is that we um it formulates in our daily conversation. So, let's say you're on a job, and somebody's like, hey, how you doing? The first thing we do, if we trust the person, of course, because sometimes, depending on where you work, you may just keep it real regular and not go into anything. But with certain people that we may be cooler with or whatever, a lot of times we go into complaint mode. We go into all the issues, and this is happening, and that happened, and a lot of this becomes almost there's almost like a certain level of satisfaction to have more things to complain about, and it becomes cyclical, and that momentum makes it hard to get out. And but if you want to get out, the first step, because this is a step-by-step process, the first step is really that you make a personal dedication, whether you say this to yourself whether you write this down, whether you text message this, you put it in your notes, you put it in your calendar, making a commitment to yourself that you will you will take care of yourself, and you will prioritize healing, and you will respond to triggers, stressors, etc., with a protected time frame of healing on a consistent basis. And that's a major step to carry with you. So if there's any questions, definitely shoot me a DM. I'll be sure to check that. I appreciate you guys coming through. This will be a Tuesday thing, so be sure to check in. Be sure to be checking my page for just the reminders and different things like that I'll be posting up. But for those of you who know me already, I apologize for the delay. But like I said before, I'm back and ready to work. And whatever it is you're going through, whatever it is you're doing, I'm definitely here as a support, and I'm here to push the needle, and help you to get to the space and the level of existence that you want to get to, and to overcome some of the things that have been pulling on you for decades of time. Things that you may not be able to shake. This is the time to really start working on those things, and to start moving towards that next level. So again, man, thanks for listening. Stay tuned in, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday.
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.